Hey everybody, welcome to the iProv Made podcast, where we help you become a more profitable practice. As always, I'm Jordan Smith. Today's a solo cast, so no RJ today, but we've got a very special guest, Kinley with Edafio Technology Partners. So many of our listeners that we've heard from talk about a profitable practice not only being directly tied to patient numbers or income or providing the right type of services, but tons of different things. And one of those things is technology. And Kenny and Adafio Technology Partners, they specialize in healthcare and making sure that technology works as a advantage to your organization, right? And not something that you just have to use to get through. So I'm excited to bring this perspective to everybody. You guys will be familiar with Edafio for longtime listeners of the pod because we had somebody else from the organization on a few episodes ago. But today I'm excited to bring you Kinley with Edafio Technology Partners. Hey everybody, welcome to the iProv Made podcast, where we help you become a better, more profitable practice. I'm Jordan Smith. RJ's out today, so you guys get the luxury of just hearing my voice in addition to one other that I'll introduce here in just a second, which is Kenny Kinley, the president and CEO of Edafio Technology Partners. Hey, Kenny.
Hey, Jordan. How are you?
Good. For listeners of the podcast, the name of his company will sound familiar because we actually, if you reference back to episode 14, we actually had Valerie Morning on. She did such a great job that she said, you need to talk to my boss, the president and CEO of Edafio Technology Partners. There's lots of knowledge that he can share with your audience. So, Kenny, we appreciate you being on.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So, Kenny, before we get started, I always like to share kind of our thought process on how we view the most successful practices, right? So a lot of the times whenever there's an issue within a practice, the very first thing that you recognize as an owner, as a practice manager, whatever the case may be, are those symptoms, right? And just like listeners out there, you know that symptoms are underlying, there's an underlying issue that's causing those symptoms that you have to dig into and kind of do some root cause analysis. But the point is, typically the symptom is an issue of something larger that's going on in your practice. That's the next step. As we always say, the bad news is it's probably all your fault, listener. The good news is it's probably all your fault. So guess who the one best equipped to fix it is, right? So from there, it's about taking accountability for the issue at large and not just the symptom of a problem. From there, we always talk about it's important to take a step back and figure out what the vision of the organization is, right? Not only where you want to go this year, but where does the practice want to go 2, 3, 4 years down the road? What is the overarching vision, right? Vision does everything from help lay out the direction for the entire organization, but we always say it also creates guardrails for your employees and people within the practice so that you don't have to be involved in every decision. And that's what the vision does. The next thing we always talk about is from the vision, now you can start to create specific strategies, whether it's that one specific issue or you're looking at the practice as a whole. Develop certain strategies that then you can assign tactics to. As business owners, a lot of the times we hire, we plan, we do everything from a tactical perspective. So we really work backwards. We say you got to start up top with a vision, then develop a strategy. Strategies are kind of the outcomes. That's the plan. The tactics are the steps in which you need to take in order to accomplish that plan. And the last part is alignment and making sure that you're empowering your team and getting everybody rowing in the same direction. All that being said, that's why we're excited to have Kenny on the podcast today, because I know I've heard him speak. I've been in numerous kind of business consulting courses and different educational things where he's got a lot of input and value on all the things that we talked about. So Kenny, let's just start off with giving us a quick introduction of not only yourself, but also Edafio Technology Partners.
Great, glad to do it. Yeah, Edafio Technology Partners, we have been around over 20 years now, and we are a technology services company that does all different types of technology support for clients, predominantly in Arkansas, but also in Tennessee and Oklahoma. We think of our offerings kind of in 5 different pillars. The first is around just IT consulting. So we can come alongside IT departments and help them with projects and anything they need from just a staff augmentation or just additional expertise. So that's one piece of our business. The second piece is managed IT services. So for a lot of clients, they say, hey guys, we just want you to take care of it for us. So we do full managed IT services. Those 2 parts, Jordan, we've been doing for over 20 years. That's kind of the core of our business, been doing it a long time. The other 3 pillars are fairly new, things really we've added over the last 5 years. The first is around cloud. We all know that cloud is a big topic for all companies right now. So we've got a cloud practice that can help you determine, do you need public cloud? Do you need a private cloud offering? Do you need to stay on-prem with your software? So we have a cloud team that handles that. The fourth is cybersecurity. Is just like cloud, cybersecurity is a big topic for all businesses and all sizes. So we've got a dedicated cyber team that does risk assessments, all types of cyber remediation work and training and things like that. And then the 5th pillar is healthcare consulting. You alluded to Valerie speaking on a previous podcast. She leads that group for us. We added that practice or a pillar about 5 years ago. About 2/3 of our business is healthcare. And what we found was that some of these clinics needed help with things like compliance programs and training and chart reviews and EMR support and questions. So we formed that healthcare consulting group. So all 5 of those pillars together, we feel like make us unique in the market because we can do a lot of different things and really try to be that one-stop shop for clinics and hospitals.
I love that. I know just speaking for a lot of listeners out there, there's probably 2 groups. One, when you started mention technology and technology consulting and, the different pillars, some of them probably said, oh, cool. Yeah, this is exciting. The other half probably said, oh, the thing that's most stressful in my office is the technology, right? So both groups, whatever group you're in, if you're listening to this, I think this is going to be super valuable. I'll tell you that second group, I know a lot of the things that Kenny and his group does, using technology as leveraging it in a way which actually is a competitive advantage for your practice, and not something that holds you back, which I know talking to a lot of clients we consult with on the healthcare side and even some listeners of this podcast, typically it's their technology is a hurdle, not an advantage, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us kind of about your most successful clients. Who do you, for listeners out there, just talk about your methodology, types of folks you like to work with, that type of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the best types of clients for us are ones that, as you just said, Jordan, can appreciate the need for technology and how they can leverage that as a differentiator in their business. So we work with a lot of clinic systems and hospitals as well that understand that IT is a critical part of their business and it's not a necessary evil, as you described in that first group. So those are the clients that we typically work with the best. That the key part for us, when we call ourselves Edafio Technology Partners, that partner piece is really important because one of our core values is committed to client success, and we see ourselves as an extension of our client's team. So, we will be on site with that client. We know their business. You'll see us walk in the halls, and a lot of our clients, we have their email address, or we've got a badge, where we're there so much and such an extension of their team. So where we can be there, be visible, be a part of their business, be a partner and not just a vendor, those are definitely the best types of clients for us and where we're more successful for sure. We typically start those with some type of assessment, kind of similar to the framework you talked about at the beginning. In most situations, a client calls or a prospect calls and they've got an issue, right? It's a network issue, or it's a question about HIPAA, or it's something around there, or an EMR question. And so our typical engagement is we'll start with some kind of assessment around that pain point. And then as a part of that, we can help paint a picture for a roadmap to say, okay, as you said, here's a symptom, right? Maybe a network issue. But here's really the start of more of a roadmap for your technology needs. So, I think about when I started 9 years ago, EMRs were still fairly new and people were trying to figure out, how do we get around this? And what's the least amount of stuff I need to put in that just to be compliant? And here we are 9 years later, and it's an integral part of your systems. And so we find that, if we're able to get in there and help them see technology as an enabler to their business, that seems to work better.
No, that's great. And, I know we talk about this all the time that, so many practices, so many doctors, so many offices are busy, but it doesn't quite hash out whenever you look at the bottom line. Another way to say that is they're busy, but they're not profitable, right? And sometimes you look at it and say, well, how do we be profitable? We need more patients. Well, we can't do more patients. Everybody's as busy as they could be. So in a situation like that, kind of what's advice that you would give if there's a listener out there and that's what they're dealing with, which is, Kenny, I hear all that sounds great. I'm busy, but we're just not profitable. What's the kind of first step that you would have them take?
Yeah, that's exactly the reason we started this healthcare consulting practice 5 years ago, was to help some of our existing clients who were having those pain points. So, they were just trying to get through the day and see the patients and do the documentation they had to do. And just like you said, just barely get through. And so, we built this team to come alongside them for, relatively small number of hours and financial commitment to say, let's look at maximizing these compliance programs. What we see is a lot of our clients, a lot of these practices, they leave money on the table because they don't have time to focus on maximizing these Medicare or other payer programs. And so, and also just doing basic things like chart reviews, right? It's so easy to code something at a 2 when it should be a 3, or a 3 when it should be a 4. And so we really built this practice to have our team be able to come alongside and help maximize that. So, in these days, even a point or two of margin is a huge impact to your business. So, one level in a compliance program, or 10% of your chart reviews moving up a level can have really big returns. Also around EMR consulting on how to best use those systems. So we've got some expertise. So what we hear a lot from physicians and nurses as well is, we can't see as many patients because of the EMR. Well, these systems have come a long way in the last, 9 years that I've seen them at least. Mm-hmm. And so we were able to come alongside and, well, let's build some workflows. Let's build some templates. So I think, Jordan, those are the key things: is how do you be more efficient seeing patients? And then how do you maximize the programs that are out there to make sure you're getting paid for what you did?
No, I love that, especially the point about the EMR. The purpose of that thing is to make your office more efficient, not to slow things down, right?
I remember vividly. So I was fortunate enough to work on site with one of our clients for a number of years in their technology department. So I got to interface with a lot of physicians, and it was hugely valuable for me to understand those pain points. And I would have them tell me I can see 20% less patients now because of this system. And we were able to go back to the vendor and say, okay, this is not right. You're supposed to see 20% more patients. And so it's a journey. I mean, it's not an overnight fix, but being able to partner. Another interesting thing is what we find, especially in these smaller practices, is they don't have time to call that EMR vendor, right? And to wait and on their help desk or to request a consultant. And so that's something else that we're able to do is we'll say, okay, we'll be your frontline support. Let us call, eClinical, pick your example, EMD, whoever, and we'll deal with them for you, and we'll help you build those workflows or build those templates. So like you said, a lot of it's just time. So that's where we like to try to, help make those things more efficient.
I love that. I mean, time is the most valuable resource in any organization from a healthcare perspective, even more so. And everybody's time, for the practice administrator, the front desk person, how often are they and even something as simple as your internet provider. How often are they upfront on hold with Comcast, or your printing vendor, or something like that? So talk a little bit about kind of time utilization for those practices out there that don't know where to start, or they're not keeping track of it, or they know that their people are spending a lot of time doing stuff that's not their job. Especially from a technology standpoint, because I feel like that's where a lot of issues are. Talk about kind of what your mindset is around that.
Yeah, I think it's all about picking what one or two of those pain points are, whether it's internet service provider, or my EMR is too slow, or they're not responsive, but picking a few of those pain points and getting help, right? Whether that's a company like Edafio or a different company. There's lots of good IT companies around Arkansas. But just finding someone to come in and give you some help, give you at least a perspective on it, because so many advances have been made in systems and things like internet service providers, right? Those costs and things change all the time. EMR companies are coming out with updates and new features. And so I just don't know how a practice can stay on top of that without getting some outside help. So that would be my advice, is pick a couple of those pain points, use that as a starting point to bring in some help, and then just chip away at it. Because it takes time. It really does. It takes time to focus on those things.
We're big believers in consultants, and we all know the best consultants are just the ones that don't come in with a whole bunch of solutions, but they come in with a bunch of questions.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, Valerie talked about that quality strategy assessment or quality strategy document, and that's really all that is a laundry list of questions, right? And, who are your payers? What's the mix? What programs are you a part of? Because you're right, then you can figure out how to show impact. And so I think that consultant word has really gotten a bad rap over the years. But I agree with you. It is helpful, right? A consultant is supposed to be someone who comes alongside and helps make you more efficient and more profitable. And so I know I challenge our team all the time. If we can't show our client the value of what we do, or the value of that hour we spent on them, for them, we've done something wrong. And so I think that's the key part, is making sure whoever you pick for a partner, that when you see them, you don't see them as a cost center. You see them as, hey, here's somebody who's going to help make us more efficient, make us more money, help us see more patients. That's what a good consultant does.
Yep. Yeah. And from there kind of, develop out, which is nice. I like y'all's 5 pillars, because that covers a lot of different areas depending on where the need is in the practice. And one of those needs that we haven't touched on yet, but I know is a big deal, and unfortunately more often than not is something that a lot of practices don't think about until it's too late, which is that security aspect of it, right?
Absolutely. I think that's probably my biggest fear for all companies, us included, is cybersecurity risks. I mean, there is so much going on in this space right now, and healthcare in particular is under attack, because they know that some of these clinics and practices and hospitals aren't spending the money on cyber that maybe they should, and they're going after physicians and clinical staff, targeting them with these cyber attacks through just basic things like phishing emails and text messages and things, but also through more sophisticated attacks. We're just seeing more and more of that. So, 2 years ago, those were targeted at the bigger systems, right? They were going after these big healthcare systems. Well, now the bad guys have figured out that they can go after these small clinics as well. And it may not be a big a payday, but they're finding it's easier to go do. And so they've come a long way from just asking you to send 100 gift cards, which was the thing a few years ago. I mean, we see this. They're going after the finance department with a very targeted email to that billing person that looks very much like it came from the physician, and saying, hey, I need you to wire money here. I mean, the precision of it right now is just very scary. So we're encouraging our clients to do a more robust security risk assessment. When all this meaningful use stuff came out, they required an annual security risk assessment. Well, what we see is most clinics do the path of least resistance, right? What's the cheapest way I can check this box, right? And so it was a checklist. I mean, I saw it when I was on site with a client, and it's a checklist, and it's $1,000. Well, it really doesn't protect you. You may get to check the box, but one of the things we've really challenged ourselves is to what can we do in an affordable way for an annual security risk assessment that adds value? How can we scan their network and make sure there's nothing bad out there? How can we do walkthroughs and make sure that people don't have their passwords written on sticky notes, which you'd be surprised how much that happens. What are the policy reviews? So we've gone from a time, Jordan, where it's not if I'm going to be hit, if I'm going to be attacked. The question's when, and then what protocols do you put in place to protect yourselves? And if you do have an issue and you've got some reportable offense that OCR is going to come in and look, you can say, okay, we took every precaution. We did a robust security risk assessment. Here's all the things we did. Not we have an issue, we have to go report to 500 patients, which is everybody's worst nightmare. OCR comes in and says, well, you didn't do anything. You didn't try to prevent this. So that's my biggest fear for clinics across the country right now is making sure they're as protected as they can be.
No, that's a great point. And I want to hit on something that you said too, which I want to make sure that we don't gloss over, which is these things aren't just happening to giant healthcare networks, right? Yeah, the attacks are more specific and they're getting more intricate every day, but they're also not specific as far as who they target, right? And I've heard that a lot from Valerie and some other people that I've talked to in the organization. So talk about that concept too, kind of how that works and even some specific examples for listeners on kind of what they should look out for.
Absolutely. It is, they are targeting physicians. I'll just tell you the specific thing. And let me take a quick sidebar so I don't forget. Mm-hmm. And this has nothing to do with Edafio or any technology company, but everybody needs to make sure they've got cyber insurance. Okay, that may be the most important thing I say here on this podcast, and it's not a commercial. We don't do that. Talk to your insurance agent. But we're to a day now where every clinic, regardless of size, needs some type of cyber insurance policy because, like I said, it's a matter of when. And so if there's an attack and you've got to disclose, I mean, those are door closing events if you don't have the proper insurance to help you. So sorry for the sidebar there, but I wanted to get that.
Great point.
It is critical that you have a cyber insurance policy, and whatever you think you need, just triple it because it's pretty affordable right now. It's getting better. Ask a lot of questions, but I wanted to have a little bit of a sidebar there because I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. Again, going back to if you get to the point where this happens to you, it's terrible. And more often than not, most of the measures that you can take at that point are too late. And it's just a lot of it's left up to chance. So
it is. And I think the scariest part of it is the biggest risk is what we call the human firewall, right? I mean, it's that individual that gets that email and they're at work on a computer and they're checking either their work email or even their personal Gmail account, and they get a phish attack and they click the link or they download the document, and then that machine's infected and then it spreads into the network, and you've got patient data at risk, right? You've got patient data all over the place. And so that human firewall is the biggest risk to your practice. And everybody's guilty of it. It's hard, right? We all get those on a daily basis now. And so I think that's probably the biggest risk regardless of size. An interesting thing we're seeing is more and more targeting specifically to physicians. So they will go after these physicians because they know they're busy. They're already getting bombarded with 100 emails an hour. And so trying to slip stuff through, because if they can get into those systems, they can get into the whole thing. And so I think that's something we're seeing now is a very targeted attempt at physicians and also office managers as well. So I think things like security training, I mean, that's probably one of the things where we see the most of is clients asking us for security awareness training. So there's so much good stuff out there to train your users. And it not only protects your organization, but it also protects the individuals in your practice, right? Because they're not just trying to get to the clinic's financials, right? In the clinic systems, they're trying to get that individual's passwords and bank account numbers and, passwords as well. So things like security awareness training are just becoming mandatory now. We're moving to a time, I don't think we're too far away, Jordan, where we probably won't do business with a client that won't agree to do some kind of security awareness training, because it's so important to protect their business. And then the second thing is multi-factor authentication. On your personal accounts now, your bank accounts, any of your accounts, it's asking for that second level of authorization, right? It's sending you a text message to enter a code into that website. You're seeing that on all your banks and credit cards and insurance, 401k programs. I mean, that's becoming the default. Well, you need to have that for your clinic systems as well. So again, like security awareness training, multi-factors, it won't solve everything, but at least it's another layer of security that we're seeing more and more of our clients adopting. And just like security awareness, we're moving to a day where we may not do business with a client if they're not willing to do multi-factor authentication, because it protects them and us as well. So those would be the two big things we're seeing. And I just think what used to be security awareness training and multi-factor authentication used to be nice to haves. Mm-hmm. That's over now. It's required. I mean, it just needs to be required to protect your business.
Well, again, for all the listeners out there, again, imagine the scenario if this does happen. Imagine your office having to reach out to every single patient that you have and telling them that your information has been compromised because somebody hacked us, attacked us, and for whatever reason, it got through our set. I mean, that is a nightmare scenario, So.
It is. And I think you can have things and going back to the insurance, and you can help cover the cost of that. The unquantifiable issue is what that does to your patient population, right? Do you lose patients over it, and they go to another provider? So it's not only just a financial impact, but how you're viewed in the market as well. So it's a really, really big deal.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, same reason health insurance is important. It's, same thing with the health of your business. And this is an integral part of that. So I know you guys have the 5 pillars. We've talked about a couple of them specifically, and I know it probably depends on where the practice is, but talk to me a little bit about, we talk about taking accountability, right? And taking accountability, not only for the symptom, but the underlying issue. Tell me, typically, whenever you guys partner with an organization, or if there's a doctor out there, provider that's listening, how involved are the most successful doctors that you guys partner with? Are they in every single meeting? Is it a handoff? And I know, again, it depends on the service that you guys are offering them, but typically talk a little bit about how involved these providers and the owners are in the processes that we're talking about.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we believe in meeting cadence, being in front of our clients, talking to them about what's going on, whether it's healthcare consulting or cyber. At a minimum, we're doing some type of quarterly review where we're reviewing where we are. Here's what happened last quarter. Here's what happened. Here's what's coming up on the docket for this quarter. So at a minimum, a quarterly business review with the owners of the business, the physicians, is the minimum. What we see in our best cases would be more like a monthly cadence, where you're willing to give a company like us an hour to say, okay, here's where we are against these compliance programs. We moved you up to this level, or we moved your reimbursement up to this. Here's what we saw in the chart reviews. Here's some security training. So, an hour a month, which is a lot of time for a physician, I understand, but the best clients we see are ones that see the value in it, and they want to sit down with us and ask questions about cyber. And what's interesting is those questions then turn into more personal questions, right? So what about my home accounts and my personal? And then we end up talking about password protection tools or password tools and things. So, what we find is if they're willing to give us that time, we can not only add value to their practice, but we've been known to go on site and help somebody get their home internet a little more secure and things like that. So the more visibility, the better, but the best ones are at least giving us an hour a month just to see what we're doing and what's coming up.
Yeah, and I would say if you're a listener out there, and whether you're already working with a group that you love, great. If you're looking for something like Kenny's talking about too, that's got to be one of the questions on your list. If you're vetting organizations to partner with, ask them how much. If you're a provider owner, how much do I need to be involved? That's one of the important questions on the front end. And I would agree with you. Part of that accountability and part of it's an hour a month, but yeah, it's an hour a month.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I think we can make a difference. I know Valerie talked a little bit about this too, Jordan, but our kind of minimum, regardless of clinic size, is 4 hours a month of this healthcare consulting to look at the compliance programs and the chart reviews. And that may not seem like a lot, but this team can get a lot done in a small amount of time. And once you get on that cadence of it's an hour a week, or maybe it's a half day a month, you can get a lot of progress done. So those are the kinds of things, like you said, time is the most valuable asset. So we try to minimize that. We try to take care of things as much as possible. But you're right, the owners, the physicians, the office managers who will give us that time to meet are definitely the best clients for us.
Sure. I mean, because the strategies and the implementation that you guys are talking about in that hour, it's probably not unreasonable to talk about the tens of hours that will save the practice, that same month, with just you guys figuring out what the best tactics are to help alleviate either some time or some pain or whatever the case may be, right?
Agreed.
So, all right, well, let's talk about kind of specifically, if there's some listeners out there, what are kind of some of the key things that you look for to say, I think we can make a difference in this practice? Is it size of the practice? Is it the type of specialty that they have? Is it the type of technology, type of EMRs? What are some specific things that you look for and say, I think this is a good fit. We can make a difference here.
I think it really is based on the pillars that are needed, right? So if it's healthcare consulting, we can deal with any size practice, right? For that minimum of 4 hours a month, we can make an impact to help them maximize those programs and things. So really any size clinic on the healthcare consulting side, and the same for cyber, right? You need to have an annual security risk assessment. You need to have some just basic security awareness training and things. So really for our cyber and our healthcare practices, any size makes sense. Okay. Now, as you talk about things like cloud, that's typically where clinics need to be a little bit larger. If they're interested in moving to more of a cloud-based model, if they're using an on-prem server for an EMR and they want to say, okay, I want to go to the cloud. I really want to get out of having this server in this closet or my whole EMR system under the office manager's desk. I want to consider the cloud. Those are typically a little bit larger practices. We see a lot of clinics moving to their EMRs, companies have, cloud solution. That seems to be a trend. And if you're happy with your EMR, and you think, hey, I'm not planning to change this in the next 3 to 5 years, that's a fine decision. I mean, those guys do a good job supporting that. The caution would be if you're not happy with it, or you think, hey, I may want to switch, or my practice is going to grow into other, clinical practice areas, and I need a more robust EMR. I would caution you against going to those EMR cloud solutions, because it's really hard to get it back once you're there. They design it that way, that's part of their business. So the cloud piece is typically a little bit larger. Okay. We host several clinic EMR systems in our cloud. So we have several clients who said, hey, I want to get out of this on-prem. I know this is not secure. I know my office could get flooded or, whatever, but I'm not ready to go to the public cloud. I'm not ready to go to Azure, or AWS. Do I have a middle ground option? So the Edafio cloud, we host, EMDs, eClinicalWorks, seems like there's another. We host a variety of EMRs in our private cloud. So it's local, it's in a local data center. If we need to get the data out for something, we can. If you want to transition to a new EMR, we can do that. So the cloud clients typically are a little bit larger, but we're seeing even the smaller clients are more interested in that. Mm-hmm. And then definitely the IT consulting and the managed services are typically larger, right?
Yep.
They need a team. They know, they've outgrown their one IT person, or the smaller managed service company where they have their one person they deal with. We typically say those be larger clinic systems, multiple locations, sometimes multiple EMRs, right? Depending on, so for those two pillars around IT consulting and managed service, those are typically larger clinic systems and even small to medium-sized hospitals.
Gotcha. You mentioned some very specific things that people should look out for whenever they're looking at a cloud provider, right? What are some other kind of, and let's be specific because I like that train of thought. What are some questions for some listeners out there if they're thinking about whether it's a managed IT company or just, somebody that's looking for cybersecurity? What are some questions that you could say, hey, make sure on that vetting process, make sure you ask these 3 or 4 questions because these things are important. Because at the end of the day, there's some listeners out there saying, that's great, I love all that. I don't know how to hire an IT or a cybersecurity. I'm a doctor. I don't know how to hire an IT manager so what are some questions that you would say, sure, there's hundreds of them, right? But if there's only kind of, a top 5 list of questions, what could you arm some practices with to say, make sure this is on your list whenever you're talking to companies like Edafio Technology Partners?
Absolutely. A couple things come to mind. One is to check references. I think that's really important that you find a clinic that is your size or larger, or that may be on your EMR, right? If you're an EMD shop, find someone else that supports those similar systems. So I think reference checks, that seems to be a lost art, Jordan. People don't check references. I just think that's crazy. I think find some references, and yes, they're going to give you their best clients, but we live in a small community, and everybody knows everybody, and so in your community, wherever you are, find some people who know about that company. So I think reference checks is a really big deal. The other part is making sure that you understand what's in these agreements or what's in these proposals. If managed IT companies, and I have this conversation with our guys a lot, if we talk in techno speak, if we talk in our own acronyms and things that only we understand, the client's not going to understand that. So ask questions until you're comfortable, and make sure that the wording in the contract is business terms that are things that you understand, and don't just gloss over it. We see a lot of our clients say, hey, I don't understand technology, I trust you guys to handle it. Well, if you've had a relationship with a company like us for 10 years, that's fine. But if you're looking for a new company, check references, make sure the words in the agreement that you sign make sense to you. And so those would be 2 things that I would recommend. And I think also just having a bench. We see this a lot where, clients have somebody, they go work with an IT company and they have a person, but ask those questions like, okay, so if this is my person, what happens when they go on vacation? Or what happens when I have these different needs? So I think understanding the breadth of services from your IT company up front is really important too.
No, I love that. I think those are great tips. And in a group like you guys where you've got that healthcare consulting pillar, there's nothing that says that they can't start with y'all, right? And call you and say, here's what I'm looking for. Like we talked with Valerie, the first conversation's always free. It doesn't hurt to reach out and just talk to us, and we'll give you a checklist. We'll tell you what to ask, what not to ask, what to look out for. But that is important. So I think those are great tips. I would add one more to it. We talk about it all the time. Mission and core values, picking an organization that they don't have to have the exact same ones as you, but if they're similar, and Kenny, I know I've heard you mention this too, is find partners that think the way that you think, that value what you value. And even if the way they do things procedurally is a little bit different than the way you've done it in the past, or not quite the way that you would do it, more than likely you're going to be successful because you guys are talking about the same kind of long-term vision, right?
Exactly. Trust is so important when you're talking about your IT company and who you work with. And again, we stress that word partner. We want to be an extension of that team. if they groan every time they see us come in the door, go, oh, there's the IT guys. We're not doing the right job, or that's not the right client for us. I mean, we want to be an extension of their team. So that trust piece is really important.
No, I love that. So you mentioned something that I wanna circle back around to, which I think is very important, and hopefully the listeners think it is too, which is tracking that progress. And I know you talked about those monthly meetings. We talk about KPIs all the time, key performance indicators. In the IT world, sometimes that's a little bit fuzzy or a little bit gray. So what are kind of some key performance? How do you track progress and outcomes? I know that's a part of the framework. What would you tell listeners out there to look out from how their current, whether it's security or cloud or just their IT infrastructure in general? What are some outcomes or some KPIs that you'd have them pay attention to?
I think the big thing around the technology space, so on the healthcare consulting side around compliance, that's easier to measure, right? Am I increasing my scores? Are my average chart levels going up? I think the KPIs are we improving, right? Are we increasing the reimbursement or the compliance program? So those things are a little more black and white. I think on things like cyber or even just managed IT services, it's, what is the roadmap, right? Here is the 1, 2, 3 year plan. And then every quarter, or ideally every month, are we making progress towards those? If we said we're going to accomplish, and that's just basic stuff, Jordan, but it's amazing how many times we can't get clients to even meet with us to talk about it. We said we were going to accomplish these 3 things. We're going to finish this network upgrade. We're going to patch these servers, and we're going to upgrade these workstations. And let's meet next month and see how we're going to do. And the clients say, well, we trust you. You guys just go do that. So my advice would be, and while we appreciate the trust, my challenge to our team and what I would encourage people listening to do is, just like you hold, your staff accountable, hold your partners and vendors accountable to things that they're going to get done. Get in that cadence and say, okay, here's the 3 things we said we were going to get done. When we sit down next month, okay, these 2 are done. Okay, this one we hit a little bit of a snag. We're going to fix this one. It'll be done next month. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I think going back to cadence and just making sure that you're clear as the physician or the owner or the office manager, are we moving in the right direction, right? Are we making progress? Because there's no pain out there that you can fix overnight, right? Any of these pains that you identify, or the symptoms, as you said at the beginning, they take time. It could take months to resolve some of these, but to me, the most important thing is, are you making progress? Do you feel like you're making progress to getting those things resolved?
No, I love that. So many practices out there I know are listening to this and saying, oh, that's a good point. Because what I think about my IT company, I call them when something's broken. They come out and they fix it. All right, job well done. But, take that to another step, because whether it's Kenny and his group or the current group that you're working with, and, your golfing buddy that you love that helps you out, sit down and figure out what some KPIs are. I guarantee that most people are not leveraging their technology partner like they should be.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So let's say another scenario real quick before we get in the final round, and where I ask you a couple specific questions about your path and your success, because I know all the listeners out there, it's important to hear your story too, or tidbits of it at least. I know we've got an audience out there of practice managers and CFOs and CEOs and that are listening to this and saying, Kenny's speaking my language. Bad news is I've got 5 doctors that I've got to convince to talk about like how to get buy-in from the rest of your team. And I use that example as the doctors, but from the top down too. I know a lot of the times you bring in a new group like this and you guys you have to retrain the staff and even the person at the front desk on how they answer the phone or how they do something procedurally. So just talking general kind of, one, we know that you've got to get buy-in from the entire team, but what are some things that you would tell folks out there? What are some tips to say, if you're listening to this and you think there's something that resonates with you, here's how to start to get buy-in from the team, that you need things like cybersecurity, or you need to really investigate what your cloud solution is.
Yeah, great question. I think the key is to bring people to those decision makers. What we see is a lot of office managers or different people, they don't want to bring a company like us to their physician meeting or to their board meeting because they feel like it makes them seem like they're not doing their job. And what I would encourage them to do is think about that a little bit differently. This is a very complex field. Cyber, IT services, even these compliance programs. I don't know how people do it. I don't know how you could possibly stay on top of all that. So, I guess nicely put, maybe suppress the ego a little bit and let people like us help, right? Let us have that conversation, because when we're able to get in front of those physicians or board of directors, we can speak that language with that credibility that it's just really hard for other people, for people to do. So that would be my recommendation, is let us help, or let another IT company do that. Now, the caveat to that is, you've got to make sure you don't go in there and speak a bunch of techno language that those guys don't understand. So, but hopefully if you pick the right company, those things will work. But that would be my one encouragement, is bring the experts to those decision makers. Don't try to be a buffer.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. It's, hey, if you believe in what we're saying, don't sell us. Let us sell us. I wouldn't send a surrogate to somebody's parents that I wanted to give an engagement ring to. I would sit with those parents, and it's the same in business. It's just basic relationship stuff. So I love that, Jeff. All right, Kenny, I'm going to turn the spotlight on you now. So this is what we call our final round. I'm going to ask you 2 or 3 specific questions, just about you and kind of your path. We always talk about, we all want a silver bullet, but there are no silver bullets, just lots of lead ones, So typically an organization that's successful is built off one where, there's systematic, predictable, repeatable processes in place that have got an organization to where they are. So this part, I just want to kind of ask you about really briefly your kind of recipe for success. What are the ingredients that you practice within your own organization, and maybe even yourself personally, to make sure that Edafio Technology Partners is moving in the direction that you want to move them?
Sure. Yeah, I think on the personal note, I've been fortunate enough to get to speak to groups over the years, and I always go back, if I had to just pick one thing, if I look back at my career, is to build a network of mentors. I just can't begin to tell you, Jordan, how important that's been for me in my work life, starting in my early 20s to late 40s now, that I've always been blessed to have a great group of people around me that know more than I do about specific topics. And so I would tell you that be humble enough to go sit down in front of somebody who's a little ahead of you and say, tell me how you handled this and tell me what you did. You'd be shocked at how many times I do that in a given month, right? Whether it's parenting tips or how to be a better husband or how to be a CEO, I think that would be the thing and I just don't think many people do that. And so if you're an office manager of a 5-doc clinic, go find an office manager of a 20-doc clinic that and trust and respect, or that you've heard good things about, and go say, tell me how you do this. And so that would be if I had to pick one on a personal note, and I look back and say, what's really been the most impactful for me, it's those mentors. And what's interesting now, as I'm in my late 40s, now I'm getting to do that more and more, right? So now I get to be that mentor, and there's mentees coming to me and asking me those. So it's really neat to kind of be at this phase where I'm doing both. I'm going and seeking advice a lot from people, but now I'm also in a position where I'm giving it. So that's been kind of cool.
No, I love that. It's the whatever situation you're dealing with in your business, I guarantee there's 100 other people out there within reach that have dealt with that same problem and found a solution, whether it's implementing their solution or just talking it out with somebody. A lot of kind of providers, and even office managers, you kind of think that you're on an island, especially if you're an entrepreneur. It just seems like I'm the only one who's doing this. I got to create my own path. No, be vulnerable, open yourself up. All it takes is an ask. You'd be surprised what type of input you'll get by just opening yourself up, picking up the phone, shooting an email, connecting on LinkedIn, whatever, and just asking someone for help, right?
Absolutely. I think on the work front, if I had to pick one, we've adopted this. I moved into the CEO role in January, and this year. And so what I know about myself is I'm not the most disciplined person. I'm all about whatever the issue is of the day, and let's go talk about that. So I recognize that about myself, and so we adopted this methodology called Traction. It's a book called from Gino Whitman called Traction. It's EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And I can't begin to tell you how impactful that's been for our business and for me personally to have quarterly rocks and to have what they call a level 10 meeting cadence and to set annual goals and a 5-year goal. And so we've really adopted that to be the Edafio operating system. And it's been very valuable. So I would recommend, especially if you're in that entrepreneurial class that you described, grab that book. There's several in the series, but we're big fans of the EOS stuff here. You can get a EOS consultant to come in and help you, which is what we did to start. But that's been really big for us this year, especially with all the craziness in our world, to help keep us on track, keep us focused. So from a business perspective, I would highly recommend you check that out.
Oh, we're big believers. So iProv as a company, I agree with you. We about 4 or 5 years ago, we read that book as a leadership team, and then decided to have a company-wide book club where we went through it and started implementing those. So yeah, I mean, there's so many organizations out there don't have a operation system for the organization. The same way you've got a kind of operational systems for collections and billing and that type of stuff. You also need to have one for, your leadership team as far as how the organization operates. So I would second that. Traction's a great book. I'd go out and buy it yesterday, and I think I always know if with this question, whenever people ask me, which is if there's a magic reset button, what would you go back and do earlier than you did? I know that's one thing that I always say I would do. I think you would probably say the same thing, implement something like that sooner. But anything else, if there's listeners out there, who are either starting their own organization or they're thinking about it or in there, what's one of the things that you would say in your career, if you could go back and kind of hit a reset button and change one thing, what would that be?
Oh, for me, it would definitely be to figure out this work-life balance sooner in life. Yeah. I waited too late to figure that out. And so I'm in a good place now with it and have been for several years. But I think that, figuring out what those boundaries are, what you're willing to give, what you need that mix. And it's different for people, right? Some people are perfectly good to work 60 hours a week and they're still great husbands and fathers. So it's not a one size fits all, I need to be home by 5:30 every day. That's not it, because we're all wired different. But I would say I was late to the game, Jordan, on figuring out what my mix was, what my wife's tolerance level for that was. So, it took me too long to figure that out. And so I would say figure that out early. What is your balance? Have that conversation with your spouse and with your kids for that matter, and figure out what that is and then live that. So that would be my miss that I was a little too late to the game on, but I'm in a good place right now.
Well, Kenny, I think that's a great tip. And I that's one that we haven't heard on the podcast before, but I think it's important, is just being honest with yourself and the other people in your life about, we talk all the time about what success looks like for the business, but what does it look like for you personally, and what's it mean for you and your family, and maybe it's more 3-day weekends instead of those 60-hour work. And that's fine too. It's just about finding that balance. So I would agree with you 100%, Kenny. I think that's a great kind of closing tip that we could leave for all the listeners out there. So, well, wrapping up, let's do this. If people listen to this and they're interested in Edafio Technology Partners, or even more about you, what are some ways they could get more information? How could they reach out to you personally if they've got additional questions? talk through that. And we'll also include all these links in the show notes as well. But tell them how they can get in touch with you and your company, Kenny.
You bet. Best way to get to us as a company is our newly renovated website by our awesome marketing director, Melissa. So that's edafio.com, EDAFIO.com. So that's the easiest way to get to us. You can follow us on all the social media platforms as well. She does a great job with all that. And probably best way for me personally is my LinkedIn profile. I don't do any other social media, Jordan. So LinkedIn's all I have. So if you want to get me, that's probably the best way.
That's smart, man.
Or you could, yeah, that's part of that family work-life balance. So, or you can send me an email to KKINLEY@edafio.com.
Wow. No, that's generous giving out that email. We'll include all those links down there too. And I'll tell you guys, Edafio Technology Partners, if you've got a group that you like and that you're working with, that's great. I would still reach out to them. You know, they've talked about a lot of different stuff. I know knowing personally some other people, not only in the organization, but some folks who have worked with you. We talk about references, always have great things to say. And there's always additional value that Edafio Technology Partners can bring to the table, even if it's just a 30-minute conversation, just to pick their brain and ask them some questions and make sure that you and your guys are on the right path. So Kenny Kinley, I appreciate it so much. I know our listeners do too. I look forward to talking to you more on a personal note. Thank you.
Excellent. Enjoyed it. Thanks for the invite.
All right, everybody. Kenny Kinley with Edafio Technology Partners. So again, I teased it in the beginning, a lot about what makes the best type of practice or organization profitable isn't just new business, but the things behind the scenes that help support the business. And that's why I was excited to have Kenny on and for him to talk a little bit about his perspective and how they make sure that they deliver those type of promises for all of their clients. So again, if you got any questions, if you just want to learn more about Kenny's story, or you're listening and you say, man, I'd really love to bring in a group like Edafio Technology Partners to just check out, give my practice a health check, I would encourage you, reach out to them. If you have any questions, let us know. If you've got topic ideas or different types of people from different industries that you'd like to hear their perspective on, let us know as well. We got in touch with Edafio way back because a listener reached out and said, hey, you guys should really talk to this aspect of running a practice because it's one of the more important ones, especially these days. So drop us a like, comment, share this with a friend. iProv Made Podcast. As always, I'm Jordan Smith. Looking forward to talking to you guys soon. See y'all.